The legend's secret life. Mick Jagger, the rock icon who has been the face of the Rolling Stones for over 60 years, is no stranger to the spotlight. He's a living legend, admired for his voice, his swagger, and of course, his wild rock and roll lifestyle. But behind the glitzy stage performances and the endless waves of fans, Mick has lived a life that many would consider scandalous. A life of unforgettable moments, countless lovers, and a reputation that would make anyone second guess. For decades, the press has been fascinated with Mick's personal life, especially his relationships. As the frontman of one of the biggest rock bands in history, he was constantly surrounded by women, but it wasn't just the headlines that kept the public's eyes on him. There was a time when Mick's love life was his own personal roller coaster, a whirlwind of passion, heartbreak, and, of course, wild sexual adventures. His escapades became a part of rock and roll folklore, and every time a new chapter in his love life unfolded, it seemed like the world would stop to watch. From high-profile relationships with supermodels to brief encounters with actresses, Mick's name was always tied to some of the most glamorous and stunning women on the planet. But as the years went by, something started to change. Mick grew older, and for the first time, he began to reflect on his past choices. What was once a source of pride for the rocker was beginning to feel like a heavy burden. How did this infamous part of his life shape who he is today? Behind closed doors. Mick Jagger's sexual past was often glamorized, but behind closed doors, it wasn't always as glamorous as it seemed. As the years passed, Mick began to recognize that his wild lifestyle might have come at a cost. Relationships that seemed effortless on the surface, often left behind a trail of broken hearts and emotional scars. The women he had been involved with, many of whom were strong, talented, and successful in their own right, had been overshadowed by Mick's status. It was clear that his relationships were rarely about finding true love. Instead, they were part of a pattern that reflected a life in excess, everything bigger, faster, and more intense. Mick's famous romances weren't just fleeting moments. They were filled with drama, passion, and sometimes betrayal. Some relationships ended badly, leaving Mick wondering if he could have done things differently. He admitted that there were times when his actions hurt people who didn't deserve it, and it wasn't easy to come to terms with that. But despite his mistakes, Mick didn't want to be defined by them. Instead, he wanted to grow and look back at the past with a clearer perspective. It wasn't an easy process, but it was one that was necessary for him to move forward. The Mick Jagger everyone knew was a man who lived for the thrill. But now, he was someone who had to face the consequences of that thrill. A new perspective. As Mick entered his 70s, something unexpected began to happen. He started to settle down, to reflect, and to understand the deeper side of his existence. The party animal, the rock and roll heartthrob, began to realize that the wild nights and endless relationships didn't define him. Instead, they were just chapters in a much larger story. He started spending more time with his family, especially his children. Mick had fathered 8 children from different relationships, and he began to connect with them on a more personal level. The playful, carefree Mick that everyone saw on stage was now becoming more thoughtful and introspective behind the scenes. He knew that he couldn't undo the past, but he also realized that he had a chance to make amends for it. This wasn't about being sorry, it was about understanding. Understanding that the pursuit of pleasure for the sake of pleasure wasn't what he truly needed. The once careless rock star was learning to be more present, more grounded. For Mick, the change wasn't just about mending broken relationships or apologizing to people he hurt, it was about coming to terms with his own life choices. He had lived a fast, wild existence, but now, Mick was ready to embrace the quieter, more reflective moments that come with age. A peaceful conclusion. Mick Jagger, the man who had once been the epitome of rock star excess, had finally come to terms with his wild past. It wasn't an easy journey, and it didn't happen overnight. But as he entered the twilight of his career, Mick began to embrace a new chapter. One that wasn't focused on wild nights, but on peace, love, and understanding. He started using his platform to talk openly about the mistakes he made and the lessons he had learned along the way. In interviews, Mick spoke with surprising humility about his past and how he had grown as a person. He wasn't trying to erase the legend of Mick Jagger, but instead, he was adding depth to it, showing the world that even rock stars could evolve and find peace within themselves. In his personal life, Mick found a sense of stability. He became more involved in charity work, supporting causes that mattered to him and his family. The flashy lifestyle took a backseat to a simpler, more meaningful life. He still performed, still rocked the stage with the same energy that made him famous, but now there was a calmness to his presence. Mick Jagger was no longer running from his past. He had made peace with it. Mick Jagger's sexual past, once a subject of scandal and gossip, had transformed into a reflection of his growth. He had been through it all, the highs and the lows, and emerged on the other side a more complete person. His wild sexual past was just one part of his story, and it didn't define him. The true legacy of Mick Jagger was far more complex, a tale of reinvention, redemption, and the search for inner peace. The legacy lives on. Mick Jagger's journey from rock star wildness to a more reflective, grounded figure is something that continues to captivate the world. His story is one of change, growth, and acceptance. While many might see him as the ultimate symbol of rock and roll excess, Mick Jagger has shown that it's possible to come to terms with the past, learn from it, and move forward. The Mick Jagger we see today is a man who understands the complexities of life, who understands that the wildness, the fame, and the pleasures of the past are not the things that matter most. What matters is the person you become and how you treat the people around you. Mick may have been known for his wild antics, but it's his ability to reflect, grow, and embrace life's deeper meanings that have truly defined him in his later years. Mick Jagger's journey is not just a rock star's tale, it's a story of any person who has lived a life full of highs and lows and ultimately learns the value of inner peace. Mick Jagger has come to terms with his past, but it's the future that excites him now. And who knows? Maybe the best is yet to come.